Are you, I wonder if you're able to present next week. We can add you on. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just checking to make sure. Might have a little bit of a delay start here. We're officially at week 11 of cohort, which starts our team demos. We have 2 teams that are set to demo today, and then we'll do some team updates because it seems like some teams have some updates, and I have a video for us to engage on, and we might get out a little bit early, which is perfectly okay. Still look like I'm waiting on some presenters today. I'll just let you know today we're going to have Kieran up with Team Visualize Learner Behavior first to give some updates and do a demo, and then we'll have Derek with Team PowerPoint Office Mix. We originally had planned 20 minutes per presentation, but if they go a little bit over, there's room today, so we'll let them take some time, and and I just want to say, if you're interested in presenting, we can make some time next week. Your project doesn't have to be perfect or finished, and you can just share what the team accomplished and learned. Behind the scenes today is myself, Jess, and Aaron and Jamie, who are managing producing. So if you have any tech issues or need any support there, we can have our team kind of lean in and support. And I do see Derek is here, so we might switch. Oh, there's Kieran. Awesome. Perfect. So again, we're here at Project Team Demos Week 11, and we have 2 amazing teams that are going to present out about the work that they've been doing this semester. And we'll start with Team Visualize Learner Behavior with Kieran, and then we'll hop into Team PowerPoint Office Mix with Derek, and then we'll get next week. We have 3 more scheduled. So if you want to present next week, we'll make room. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, Kieran, to start us off with Team Visualize Learner Behavior.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Do you need to share your screen?
Yes, please.
Yep. So if you go up to the top of your screen and you go to, there you are.
Hooray. Okay, let's see. This screen right here. All right. Let's see which one. This is the one I want. Okay. All right. I hope you can see a web page there.
Yep, looks great.
Oh, good. I'm a professor. I teach different geeky courses, and for every course, there's a custom online textbook-like thing. And it's got a bunch of things in it. Over here is a list of lessons that make up the course, and there's a bunch of exercises as well. So here's a typical lesson. This lesson is on making grids with Bootstrap, and most of them have the same structure. There's content at the top, a bunch of stuff for people to read and watch, and down at the bottom is an exercise. All right. That's supposed to be me. I don't look that blank usually. But there's a problem here. I wanted to know how students were actually using this software. So or using these lessons. So when I design the course and I write the lessons, I imagine what students are actually doing. And I imagine that they'd be working steadily through the lessons. Let's see if that works. I'm still not looking there. Anyway, I imagine that they would be working through the lessons, and I would design the lessons so that if they did what I imagined they would do, then we would be they would get the information they needed. But was that really true? Well, I had no way of knowing. What I really wanted to do is look over students' shoulders and see how they were actually working. And so that's what this project is about. So with this software, we added some code to it so that every 5 seconds it records where students are looking in the lesson. There's a bit more to it, but that's basically what it is, what it does. That data is captured with xAPI Magic, of course, and is then sent to an LRS. And then it came time to write some software to actually do the visualizations. And for that, we have xAPI, the data dog. So there's xAPI over there in the lower left. And this represents a data set. It shows a student working through different lessons. So each one of these slabs is a lesson. The lesson title is up here. And we can watch what the student does over this particular study session, which was a fairly long one of a few hours. We can watch them. And that green line shows the position on the page. And as you can see, that student is working through the lessons more or less as I had predicted that they would, as I had expected. All right, so there they go. But what I found is, in looking at these visualizations, is that actually some other things were going on that that I didn't expect so much. Some other behavior showed up. So let's look at an example. Let's see, I think I want this one. All right. All right. So here's, again, this is all real data. So these are students working on, working through one of the courses. Okay, so let's see what this one does. And as they work through it, you notice that they're occasionally jumping back up to the page, jumping back through the page. So they're going down and they're jumping up a bit, going down, jumping up a bit. And that actually turned out to be quite a common behavior for students. I call this jittering. I'm just making up these terms, frankly. And as you can see, the jittering is kind of local. They're not jumping up to the top of the page necessarily. They're just jumping up a little bit. So that means they're learning a bit, they're reading a bit, they're jumping up a bit. My guess is to better understand what they just read. So we've got the behavior I expected, which was pretty much go from the top down. Then we have this jittering thing, which is mainly go from the top down, but do lots of little local jumps. And there was another behavior that was quite a bit different. And I call this one lesson jumping. You'll see what that is in a minute. Let's see. Okay, it's this data set. All right, so this is just one lesson, and let's look what the student does. And they actually start off by going to the bottom of the lesson. Then they go back up to the top, and then they eventually start settling in, going down the lesson, but with some jittering, as you can see there. So what I think is going on here, if you remember that the lessons, there's one, most of them have an exercise at the bottom. So I think the student is starting by jumping down to the bottom of the lesson first, figuring out what they have to do, then going back up to the top and doing it. So that doesn't match the behavior that I thought students would, doesn't match what I thought students would actually do. And there might be some issues there in that since they're not going from the top down, they might miss some stuff. And when they're going down to the bottom, looking at the exercises and working back up, they may not quite understand what's actually going on in the lesson. So it seems to me an efficient strategy might end up actually not being that efficient. So the goal was to understand how students actually work through these lessons, added some code to this course system to capture what they were looking at every 5 seconds, sent the data to an LRS using xAPI, then grabbed the data from the LRS and created a visualization like this. One obvious question you might ask is, well, this is crazy. Why do you have a dog and sheep and there's a horse over there? And the simple answer is that I'm a geek and I could, and I have tenure. So, you know, I can mess around a bit. I've been learning Unity for the last year or so, and that's what this is written in. I'm still learning, but hopefully I'll get there eventually. So anyway, that's what I have, and there's enough time. If you have any questions, then you can type them in the chat, and I'll see if I can answer them.
We do have a question that came through. And can you walk through how visualization works, like how you're reaching to the LRS and the logic of showing it on screen in a position?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I should say that I write these textbook-like things, and I also wrote the software that I use to author these things. And so I have a lot of control, and obviously I'm also a geek, so I'm able to do stuff like that. This is all written on top of Drupal, by the way. It's a content management system, open source. It's particularly popular in higher ed. So what happens is that there's some JavaScript on this page that when you're logged in as a student, and other conditions, it basically looks more or less at your scrolling value. So as I scroll down this page, you can see, so if I was down here, it captures something analogous to the scrolling value. So that's captured every 5 seconds by a JavaScript thing, and actually the JavaScript program then sends that data back to the server that's running this software that sends it to the LRS. So rather than going from JavaScript directly to the LRS, which I could have done, I took the data back from JavaScript through this server to the LRS for security and privacy reasons. That's very important in higher ed. We have FERPA regulations for that. And I think that's just personally something I'm very concerned with. So it's all the xAPI capture is actually server to server. So the data goes from a JavaScript script on this page back to the server, which is in PHP, not that it matters. It then creates a xAPI transaction and sends it to this LRS. Okay, this is Trax. It's an open source system, and I actually run it on my own server rather than using a vendor supplied system. Again, there's the issue of security and privacy. Seeing I run this, I know exactly where it is. I can make sure that we're using HTTPS, everything's encrypted. I know the database can be secure. The data is anonymized, by the way, on the way. So when it leaves this server, it's the only thing that goes over here to identify the student is a number. And it has the number has nothing to do with anything, really. It's just a number. Okay, so this accumulated a whole bunch of data. Then to extract it, I wrote some programs in C#, again, a language I'm actually learning, and this was an excuse to learn a bit more about it. And it's pretty simple. It grabs data from the LRS and then uses some rules to filter out particular parts that I'm interested in. Then it spits out a CSV, a comma separated values file. Why that? Because it's easy. It's easy to do. You can read it in Excel. You can read it in anything else. And in fact, those data sets that you saw coming up earlier were actually just very simple CSV files. So here was one of them that you saw. This was the first one. Oh, sorry about that. I forgot. I gave these a weird extension. There we go. So they're very simple, simple data files here, as you can see. And then finally, I wrote the visualization system is a Unity program. So Unity is a game development platform which is widely used by indie developers in particular, and a bunch of commercial stuff. It's sort of one of the, amongst indie developers, it's the big gorilla in industry. And as I said, I'm learning to use it. All of these assets, the sheep and the dog and the mountain, all that sort of stuff, I purchased. They're actually pretty cheap. And then I wrote the code to read the CSV files. For example, that CSV file there, the Unity program reads it. And then for each lesson it finds, it makes a slab. And drag that over here. Makes a slab and sizes this, and then it just has a little clock that ticks over and draws the position of where the student is looking. So one of the problems with this project is it's quite idiosyncratic, and I sort of got to apologize to my team members for that, in that I wrote the software basically to do all of this stuff, simply because, and I defined the research questions, which was visualize what students are actually doing. So this approach of highly bespoke custom programming might not work in another environment. This was an experiment. It really is. I'm still learning. And I really do want to, I spend a lot of time on these courses trying to improve them. That's sort of my life's work kind of thing, to help students learn what they need to know to get good jobs and be able to raise their families well. So that's sort of what this is about. This doesn't illustrate a process that might work in a larger scale corporate environment with lots and lots and lots of courses where you need specific tools that you're going to use to crunch some of the data. And I do recognize that. Definitely a limitation of this.
Thank you for that, Kieran. I think that they want a little, there's a question, like, can you show some more of the back end, the xAPI statements?
Let's see. Well, it'd be a bit inconvenient to get it up here, but I can just describe it. So let's see. Well, let me talk about the process a little bit. So we had this research question: how do we visualize what students are actually doing? And actually, Megan said something a couple of weeks ago that I thought it's worth highlighting. She said that when she starts a project, she visualizes the charts, and that's kind of what I did too. So I thought I would have an animation. I didn't think I would put dogs in it, frankly. I love dogs. I mean, I'm a real dog guy. And there are sheep, and if you notice that there's a little dog down here, sheepdog watching the sheep. So I imagined an animation like this. The next step, though, was then to use xAPI to create a xAPI profile. I don't see xAPI as a protocol so much as a meta protocol. That is, it's a standard for creating specific standards to capture data. So most of the things, some of the things like whether someone logged in, the verbs already existed, and we could use the xAPI dictionary to just grab those definitions, grab the verbs, that sort of thing. But for some of them, we had to create new transactions, descriptions of xAPI events. For example, the xAPI events of how far down a page was someone looking at when it was sampled. I didn't find anything exactly in the existing dictionary that would work with that. So the first step was defining the research question always. That also included defining what the charts might look like, or at least having a vague idea of that. Next step was designing a xAPI profile, if I'm using that term correctly. That is a standard for each of the xAPI transaction types you would capture. The next step was to add software to this system to actually do the capture. And for that, I used what's the name? I'm trying to remember the name of the company that published an open source PHP xAPI API. And we actually had someone from the company speak to us, and I can't remember the names now. So I grabbed that and used that. So this is PHP. This is written in PHP and JavaScript. So I use that. I wrote custom JavaScript to grab the data from the browser, and it's just I made up the way the data would be sent. It's all Ajax-y and that sort of stuff. But then I used the existing PHP xAPI API to create these xAPI statements and fire them off to this LRS. And this LRS just grabbed them. So for example, Here's one of the transactions just happened just now. You see, we've got the agent. Their name is 16, which isn't a name, but I actually sort of twisted the standard a bit so I could not have identifying information here. There's no email or anything like that. It's just a number. This is their homepage, though you have no way of getting at that, or any way of knowing who that is. This verb, apparently they closed this particular lesson. Here was the lesson dropping down. There's its name. Okay, doesn't have a description apparently. And oh, the type of object was actually one that was defined in the existing dictionary. So it's you see it says tincanapi.com. If you go there in ID, you can find definitions of a lot of different statements. So that one, it actually was. In the context area, it stores a lot of information about who the class is. That is the class. It was this semester for a particular course. This is the website they were looking at, the textbook-like thing. And then there's a timestamp and some other sort of stuff. So this all then came to the LRS. Once that was here, I then wrote, as I said, some C# programs, and they're just basic stuff. For that, I used another API from the same company. Again, it's open source, but it's a C# xAPI API that lets me identify an LRS, connect to it, and then send it a query. If you're familiar with LINQ in C#, they kind of look like LINQ queries. So you specify, I want queries with this verb from this date to that date, go. And it will suck all that stuff down. So that worked pretty well. And then I had the data there, and those programs would output the CSV files. All right. And as the CSV files, so we went from the xAPI statements like that, like this, right, from a xAPI representation of a user action, filtered out the important stuff for this particular visualization, and turned that into something that looked like this. Then the Unity program, this is actually really simple to read in C# or any other language. Just to read in a line like this, chop it up where the commas are, and then write code that actually produces that visualization. I hope that answered the question.
I believe so. There's, I think, is it Rusty that you used?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, exactly. At first, I thought it was rustic, and I was thinking that's kind of weird, but it isn't. You're right. They actually wrote the APIs. I've used the one in PHP and the one in C#, and they work pretty well. My only complaint is the documentation is really lacking in both of those. So I had to do a lot of poking around inside their code, and also just a lot of trial and error to get it to work. And I hope that's something they improve. I'm not a xAPI specialist or anything. I'm just a professor out there in the world. And for people like me, not having documentation is really a challenge.
I think, Brian, so Brian asked a question, the data set is sent from Unity to the LRS. Is each visualization pulling data from the LRS? I believe you sort of showed that, but do you want to go into more detail about that?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And there's a question about the real-time aspect of this. The data isn't pulled directly from the LRS into the visualization. It could be. So I could write a Unity program which would let you watch a particular student going through something, and the dog running up and down or whatever. I haven't had the dog do much. I'll have it bark or something eventually. But anyway, you could watch that data in real time. I didn't do that. I went with a more traditional approach, and that is grabbing the data between a particular time frame, all right, and saving it in a file. And that's it. And then the visualization would then read that file. So it could be, if that's the question, it could be real time, but I chose not to do that and instead make it make it sort of more of a batch process. A batch process will grab the data every so often, save it, and then you would run the visualizations on those saved that saved data. So, for example, this directory, if you can see that still, but I'm looking at a directory with prepared visualized data sets. So I went through the CSV files, extracted sort of windows of data that I thought were interesting, and put them into separate visualization files, added comments to them. So yeah, that's a good question, but it could be done in real time. But I'm not sure it's a good idea or not. For me, for my goals, it didn't really matter. But I can imagine for people that have other goals, then yeah, you could do that just fine.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, but I do see a lot of affirmation saying how neat the visualizations are, how much they love the dogs, and lots of good recognition and feedback in the chat. So thank you so much for sharing what you've been working on this semester. As a former instructor, I appreciate how you're kind of tracking what students are doing in a really neat, cool way to enhance your courses. And I really appreciate your mission in life. So thank you for that.
Okay. If anyone has any suggestions or other questions, then let me know. And I'll see. I was looking at some of Matt's comments, and he has some good comments there about the lightweight messages and that sort of thing. So he's right. There are a bunch of technical issues involved in this.
And you have Brian would like to see more about how you use Unity to create visualizations. So maybe in the fall, or maybe at the party.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, happy to do that.
Awesome. With that, if you would like to continue chat in the chat, go ahead. But I think we're going to hop on over to team PowerPoint in the mix with Derek. Derek, are you also sharing your screen today?
I will be. Hey, Jess, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Good. Hey, everybody. I also have Casey Bagby here with me. I'm not sure if we can add her quickly.
Yep.
Oh, perfect.
Awesome. So the way that you'll do that, if you go up to tools at the top of and then there you are.
Okay, excellent. I will go ahead and drag over what I need to. Just to start with a quick introduction, I am Derek Phillips. I am a lead learning designer with Leo Learning, and I'm here with Casey. Casey, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Casey Bagby, and I'm a learning designer at Leo, and I work with Derek.
Yes, we are both in the Atlanta area. If you haven't heard of Leo before, we are an agency that creates learning for clients across industries, across sectors. We do primarily focus on e-learning. Two of our partner companies are Rustici and Watershed. So you may think, wow, you must know everything about them. Well, that's actually why I joined this cohort, because I wanted to have more informed conversations with my colleagues across the brand. So many of our clients are focused on getting the e-learning out. A lot of them are focused on very traditional methods of data collection. But as Casey and I work more and more on consultative projects, and more of our clients are open to taking risks and getting more tech savvy, we really wanted to learn more about xAPI in particular. So this is my second cohort. I was a lurker last go around, and now I'm in it. So I'll go ahead and share. I have a quiz for everybody, or a survey. Can everybody see my screen? Hopefully, okay. Mine is doing a weird blinking thing, but hopefully it is okay. Let me try one more time. All right, one more time. Okay, I think the blinking has stopped.
Yes.
All right, so Casey and I were inspired to do our particular project, pick up our particular project because of Zoom fatigue. We all know that as a result of the pandemic, we spend a lot of time on Zoom and similar platforms. here we are, which they're great because we're more connected maybe now than ever. We're interacting with people we may not have met before outside of this online format. But it really got us thinking about the original fatigue platform, and that is PowerPoint. It took about 15 years or so for PowerPoint to sort of fade into the background and Prezi to come into prominence, Google Slides. But we've been thinking, you know, how can we make what's old new again? And PowerPoint is such a classic, right? So I'm going to put the link to this survey in the chat. And tell us how you feel about PowerPoint, from one, get it away from me, all the way up to I have only used PowerPoint for the past 20 plus years, and I will continue to only use PowerPoint for the next 20 plus years. The pandemic did save PowerPoint. That's what we're seeing. It looks like Miranda, it says you're needing permission. Uh-oh. Oh, we've got a couple of responses here. Let me make sure everybody can access. Sorry about this. Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's see. I think that should let people in now. Okay, Izzy, you got in. Okay. Okay, so now maybe Martin.
Got it.
Perfect. Okay, now we're in. We're in business. Okay, so it seems like as answers are coming in, we're hitting right around the middle. Skewing upward. Okay, so we have some loyal PowerPoint fans here. We're not counting it out entirely. All right, so yeah, it seems like around half of us, some people are still coming in and contributing, and that is wonderful. But it looks like most of us are hitting right at the middle. PowerPoint is a staple, right? It probably will never go away entirely. But Casey and I, in our experience, we work with, like I said, all kinds of clients. And we've started working with more nonprofits who are on a budget, right? So we want to be conscious of that. And we started thinking about some of these nonprofits and classroom instruction in particular. I teach some adult ESL classes on the side with a nonprofit. And so we started thinking, how could we make something that is accessible, that's free, and that provides deeper insights, particularly xAPI data? So I'll go ahead and show you. We actually created 2 courses inside PowerPoint. Originally, doing some investigating, it seemed like PowerPoint Office Mix was the way to go. But naturally, we named our team, we got excited, and then I realized, oh, PowerPoint doesn't support this plugin anymore. Okay, reroute. So we found iSpring. And iSpring is really cool because once you download it to your computer, the next time you open PowerPoint, it pops up with a tab that says iSpring. And in the free version, you can add up to 5 quiz questions. There are all kinds of things that you can do in this free version, including open text entry. So it gives the course a more sophisticated feel than a typical PowerPoint, and an instructor, an HR onboarding specialist, whoever is behind this has access to all kinds of data of how the participants are interacting, how long they're spending on each activity, that sort of thing. So we created 2 different courses. We created Homework Scavenger Hunt 2.0, which is the first one I'll show you. And we also created Welcome to Tech Core. These are courses that we were able to publish through iSpring as SCORM packages, and we decided to upload here to SCORM Cloud. What's nice is I'm sure many of us are familiar with SCORM Cloud. Even as a classroom instructor, I can set up a free account. I can come in, I can actually assign specific courses to my students, or you know, whoever I'm working with, maybe a new hire I'm trying to onboard. So if I launch Homework Scavenger Hunt, you'll see Casey and I have already been through very quickly. I will add the disclaimer, this does not look good, but it should give us a dashboard of just some initial data and some initial points. As we launch the course, Casey, please feel free to jump in. Casey worked really hard to get these PowerPoints up and ready as well. So you'll notice very basic interface. I will say that this is not typical standard for Leo, right? We didn't work with our art directing team. So we didn't use any of that. We're just testing out the functionalities and really taking this from the perspective of a classroom instructor, someone who just wants to make something feel more interactive. So if you imagine this would be like an online homework assignment for an adult ESL class. So you can embed YouTube videos. You can check out different links. This lesson is all about phrasal verbs: turn up, turn down, turn over, turn around, etc., etc. Oh, wait. Oh my gosh, I lost my course. This had to happen, right? Okay, here we go. So if I get back into the course, launch it, pick up from where I left off, thankfully. We have a couple of links here that we can check out. And then we have a quiz. Of course, it's not really, you know, anything too savvy here. It's just adding a feeling of gamification. You know, it's something different than assigning a workbook page, and the instructor can go in and see who participated, what kind of response they gave. Test, test, test. Submit. Here we can read a story, a short story. It's linked out to a Google Drive doc. And then this is actually just linked to the next screen. We can take a quiz about it, get some feedback. Of course, I'm moving very quickly here. Oh, finally, a correct one. Get some results. You can set different pass criteria as you'd like. And then just a final screen. See you next class. But what's really nice is that as I close this and I go back into my dashboard, my data automatically shows up here. So it gives each student, each learner, each onboarder their name, their single sign-on name, or if you do have a list that you invited to participate, and it actually gives question level data. It will tell you exactly for text entry what the person typed, that sort of thing. So it's nice because for someone who is not as tech savvy, potentially, this is a one-stop shop. It's all in one place, and I get that question level data. What Casey and I now are playing with, we've set up the endpoints in Watershed so that if someone had, you know, multiple classes that they wanted to compare at a glance, that sort of thing, they could actually collect all of that data there. And just to quickly show you the other course, same idea, same setup, but a bit of a different context. Casey, did you want to talk us through some of the features here?
Okay, sure. Sorry, I'm figuring out this platform.
We're Hangouts people, typically.
Right?
This cohort has been good for us.
Yeah. Okay, so welcome to Tech Core. is a quick onboarding course for a company. And it's the same kind of premise as the other course. So if maybe it's a small company that doesn't have like a formal HR department or formal learning, they can have access to free software. Most companies, I think, have Microsoft Office suite. So just with this idea that people have access to these things, and if you're looking to build something pretty quickly, then you can. And again, this is the idea that, you know, you put videos in, you can see whether students clicked on the video, did they watch the whole video, did they bounce out at a certain point. Then we've got quizzes again with iSpring, allows us to do that. And of course, we can have 5 questions for free with iSpring. But if you do pay for the iSpring package, then you get a whole lot more functionality. Yeah.
So something nice here, especially in terms of compliance, you know, if there is compliance training or someone signs off that they engaged in the training, and yes, I understand, yes, I agree. Whoever's behind the scenes, the administrator here who's receiving the data, analyzing the reports, if there is any kind of discrepancy, they can say, okay, well, we have your signature, but you really didn't spend very much time in here.
Yeah.
Right? Or you kind of breezed through the mandatory training. So, you know, hopefully not a gotcha environment that somebody's in, but also gives the organization good data in terms of, you know, are there specific sections that people are ignoring of this training? How can we make it more appetizing, more accessible, that sort of thing? And then same kind of data all in one place in Swarm Cloud. Again, that's our next step personally for our team, is looking ahead. Okay, how can we pull all of this into Watershed and then start really making some meaningful correlations and conclusions there? And that is it for our team at the moment. Any questions, comments, observations?
I am checking the chat. Lots of positive feedback and questions about.
I was just going to say, definitely, Megan, you know, that was our thinking. I would really love to be savvier in terms of coding, and Kieran's, what you set up is amazing. I'm just sitting here in awe. But, you know, I think this for me personally was hopefully something that would pique people's interest and maybe get them further, deeper and deeper into data collection and data analysis. You know, we wanted to maybe create that first step where someone, myself, just thinking of my own experience, you know, I'm curious. I have clients who may be interested. Let's start out here and see, maybe, you know, maybe they'll get deeper and deeper into code and creating custom statements that they identify a need for. Completion progress, definitely. I would say stumbling blocks for me, my biggest stumbling block has been actually writing statements. And I'm not a coder. I'm, you know, just starting out to getting ideas from everybody in the cohort and the projects that I've seen. That has probably been the biggest one for me. And Helena, we did not identify the question ID. So that will probably be our next step in terms of really streamlining the statements that are going out to Watershed. That's very helpful. And thank you for pointing that out. So definitely will be on the radar moving forward.
Does it have an ID? If you look at the xAPI LRS on SCORM Cloud? Maybe it does have some, I wonder what automatically it's saying the question ID is. Because it kind of comes from iSpring's wrapper. And this is kind of the next steps for us, right? Is that what is iSpring doing automatically? And then what would we need to do in addition to make this more robust? So it does have an ID there, question slide 5.
Yeah, and I think scrolling back in the chat, I know Izzy and Helena, you mentioned that iSpring either was used in Team Storyline, which is great, or the first LRS that you tried. Totally. I mean, that's what we really loved about this. I think Casey and I were really surprised by how accessible it was, just to jump in, download it, and make something, right, quickly, and then get automated data collection going. Definitely a great starting place for anybody interested in getting deeper and learning more. It feels the steps are very much laid out. And like Casey said, the fact that from iSpring you can go ahead and publish to SCORM was amazing, wonderful for us. All right.
And it has tin can too, right? So it publishes as SCORM or tin can.
Yeah, lots of options behind the scenes, which is nice. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you, Jess. Thanks everybody so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your demo. Thank you for your learning. That was great. And so I'm going to go back to my playlist, my presentation. So next week, we have 3 teams on deck to present. We have Team xAPI and Live Code, Team Goodish, and Team Slack. I am going to we have at least Brian wanted to give a brief update this week. So I'm going to allow teams, if you would like to give an update this week about what you're working on. I'm going to pull up the GitHub page now, so that we do have a few minutes and we can make some time for that. So if anybody is, just let me know in chat if you're here. If not, Brian, we'll start with you with Team xAPI and Live Code. And then we'll go to you, Miranda. But if Brian, if you are still here. There you are.
Hi, this is Brian.
Hi, Brian.
So Team xAPI and Live Code met again yesterday, and we're sort of finalizing our project work as well as working on the presentation for next week. So some of what we're doing is working through a presentation outline. We did some project updates, which means each of the teams or small groups that are working on a live code project did a report out, and we structured that so that we were rehearsing for the presentation next week. And we're also capturing that on video. We're having different people are in different areas of the country and have different equipment. So we're finding that it helps to have a recording of it just in case there's technical issues. And then the other thing we're doing is validating that our projects are put up in the GitHub. So I'm going through and making sure that the code, that the latest version of the live code file that we have are up there so people can sort of see the demos and download from livecode.org, download the integrated development environment. And we're sort of going to have some of an overview as part of that presentation next week. And that would literally give people enough to try out some of these projects, because it's just a matter of opening the file and clicking run, and you can have it up and running on your computer. So that's sort of where we're at for xAPI and Live Code week 11.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Brian.
Yep.
I know that Miranda, Team Goodish doesn't have an update in GitHub, but I'm going to just pull it up anyway, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and then we'll get into Team Pebble.
Okay, thank you, Jess. This past week, we continued to work on the code. I do want to give a shout out to Will. Can't overstate how lucky we were to have a programmer on our team. He's done such a great job getting our bot to the first iteration that we were hoping for, along with Helena and myself. We're going to try to get it to where we can run statements and show everyone at our demo next week what it looks like in the LRS. So that's our next step, and we're excited. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Miranda. And then I think we have Helena with Team Pebble.
Hi. Yeah, sorry we couldn't present today. I just ran into some issues with my version of Pebble in terms of getting one of the features I really wanted to showcase was the content morphing. So we do have a storyboard completed. We do have some information in my version. So I'm going to get back with Judy. She's been really, really, really helpful because I have 1,000 questions. I finally understand the concept after all this time, but to get it to work, I just left a message for Judy to I just sent her a screenshot of, okay, this is not working. This is what I'm doing. Point me in the right direction because I actually want to do it as opposed to having Judy do it. So hopefully for our next meeting that we'll be able to showcase some of the different interactions because I think it is very different from looking at storyline or the normal way of doing course development. Doing it for an EPUB and using this software is a lot different way. It's a very different way of thinking, but I'm really enjoying that. So that is I update right now to figure out a few of these little technical issues, and then we'll present next week, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. I think that those are all the updates for this week. I do have a few announcements. Today is the last day to submit your call for proposals. Remember, we said last week that April 15th would be the deadline. So if you have not submitted your proposal for a session during our xAPI party on May 14th, and actually there will be some adjustments for the L&D download if you're interested in the L&D download. We're gonna have them on 2 separate dates. So the L&D download is gonna be May 21st, but the xAPI party as a team with the xAPI cohort, we prioritize your voices during that conference. I know it sounds like a party, but it's a conference. It's a learn share. It's a work out loud. So on May 14th, you can present, but today is the last day to submit your proposal for presentation. If you just want to attend and want to register, you can register online at our website, xapicohort.com, and the registration is there. Next week, we are at week 12 of the spring 2021, and that will wrap up this cohort. So I will look forward to seeing you next week. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to Slack me or send our help desk a Slack. The schedule is being finalized for the party this week, so make sure you get that submission in today if you haven't. With that, I'm going to play some Nina Simone. We're in the midst of lots of things going on in our world. And I just want to feel good. So I'll finish up today with some feeling good.